week or has had a great week. If you had joined us last night on Beneath the Hollow Moon, Laura Lee and I were chatting. If you haven't heard already, we are going to be doing a show on Christmas Day. It will go live at 7 p.m. Eastern, which is our regular time. We're going to be doing a holiday haunt hotline. So if you guys have a haunted story, doesn't necessarily have to be holiday, but if it does, that's great. You can pop off an email to me at carrielandsporch@gmail.com or connect with Laura Lee or myself through social media and just say that you would like to come on. So we're going to give you the link. You can come be our guest on the show, pop on and share your story. And we're just going to rotate everybody in and out. We have a few surprise guests that are going to be coming on, which we're quite excited about to share a story or two. So that'll be on Christmas Day and on Boxing Day. I'm not going to be live, but I did a pre-record. So it'll be a new show for Boxing Day with Spirit Switchboard, December 26th, with Troy Taylor talking about his book, The Man. Oh my goodness, I can't even believe that I just did that. It's about Houdini. So anyway, Houdini amongst the spirits. And I'm very excited about that too, because that's everything that I love. Houdini, spiritualism, seances. If we had added chocolate in, we would have hit all of my favorite things. So it was a great interview. It was really weird kind of doing a pre-record and not having folks in the chat and engaging the conversation. So that was new for me. But that segment will air on December 26th. So I hope that you all enjoy it. I'm going to hang out in the chat actually with you guys, and I'll watch it live with you. And I had some weird things, some interesting things. Not going to say that it was paranormal, but some interesting things happened while we were doing the interview. So I'll wait and see if you pick up when that stuff was happening, and I'll let you know what was going on when you see my face. Because it's clear that there was something going on. Hi, Contessa. Thank you so much for being here. Rhonda, hello, my friend. It's nice to see you. Rhonda is co-host of the Orion Effect and the freaking awesome Paranormal show with the Rift Nation Network. And she's been on the show a few times as well, too. So it's always great to see you. Hi, Mort Ellie, Victoria of Astrolight Paranormal. Thank you so much for being here. Victoria was also a guest on the show a few times, which is fun. I'm trying to organize. If you guys have been following me on social media, I do this thing called the 12 Days of Giving. The first 12 days. This is my 8th year doing it. So the first 12 days of December, we do discounts and offers and giveaways and all that kind of stuff. And 2 years ago, I did Be My Guest. So one of the giveaways was to come on the show and co-host a show with me. And so just watch for that, because I'm going to bring that back this year. We're going to do that this year, which will be fun. Sandy Cordick. Okay, my friend, I'm so happy that you're here too, because I was telling my guest before we started that I was hoping some of our East Coast friends would be on tonight to chat with us. So let's bring on our guest. So Toronto-based journalist, author, and founder of the Superstitious Times, here to discuss his book, Eerie Whispers, Exploring Canada's Reluctant Relationship with Its Ghostly Lore, Brian Baker.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Not too shabby. Yourself?
Good. Very good. Except for my little flub up forgetting Troy Taylor's name of his book. I had total brain fog moment. I got half of it right. So it's always awful when that happens. But anyway.
Yeah.
I'm excited. So we had an opportunity to connect at the Lake Superior Paracon in Thunder Bay in October. So it was lovely to connect with you and meet you there.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. Great experience, and thank you for introducing me and getting me out of my shell with regards to table tipping and using.
Oh yeah, you're welcome.
Spirit board. So.
Yeah, it's kind of a fun experience for sure. And that table that I had at the Paracon, I used it 2 more times after that, but it was starting to fall apart and was getting kind of rickety. And I had brought it in, and the legs fell right out.
Oh.
And Trevor Thomas of Snipe, so he was at the table behind you guys. So he made me a beautiful table. It is this solid table. It is so beautiful, and it's heavier, so that makes it even more interesting that it moves. Like, because it's even heavier, which is crazy. But yeah, it was great that he did that for me.
That is awesome. Those guys are great as well. Just getting a chance to meet a lot of the key folks and explorers of the paranormal in Canada at that event was very enriching for me.
Oh, good. Yeah. And everyone's so willing to share from their perspective and their experiences, which is great. And all the people that come out that want to listen to us talk is very humbling. Like, that we have this opportunity to share our passions with people who have the same passions it's heartwarming and humbling.
Yes. Oh yeah, most definitely. I had fun there. That was great.
So let's see, let's bring up some folks. Julie Dow, thank you so much. Hi, thank you for being here. Contessa Martins is saying hello.
Hello, Contessa.
Joanne Belisario, thank you so much for being here. Okay, so I am known to write at least 4 pages of questions because that's how my brain functions.
No problem.
Notes. I don't lend my books out to people. I don't borrow other people's books because I write in them. I know that may be horrifying to people, but I write notes and jot inspirations and ahas and circle, and I love my books. So I don't let them out. So I just want to make sure that I call them up. I wanted to ask you, like, before we dig into, which is it's a brilliant book. So before we dig into that, I wanted to ask if there was a Canadian haunting that hooked you as a kid or as a teen. Was there a story or something that hooked you during that time as a kid?
As a kid
or a teen?
That's a really good question. I mean, in the 80s, we were so bombarded by American pop culture that I think the first introduction to major hauntings would be something that the Warrens would have done. But I think one of the most interesting stories I remember was I grew up in Whitby, Ontario. And I was a drama geek, part of that drama clique at school. So I auditioned at Whitby Courthouse Theatre, and the Centennial building that houses the theater is haunted, allegedly haunted, of course. And it's at the time when I first heard the story, it was the ghost of a parent of someone who was on trial, who was going to be executed, and the line set forth, and I wrote about it for the Superstitious Times, is "You must right the wrong," and people would hear that, and they would see something up on the balcony, and the balcony used to be part of the upper balcony for the courthouse and stuff like that. So, renovating this old courthouse into a theater.
Right.
Still having that activity kind of tickled my fancy that had already been tickled throughout the glut of 1980s, pop culture, right?
Right.
So I think that was the first Canadian story that kind of drew me in. And then, of course, Banff Springs Hotel is such a touchstone, as well as the Fortress of Louisbourg as well.
For me, it's Lake Superior, like Edmund Fitzgerald, Lake Superior. I grew up in Sault Ste. Marie, and going up along the northern shore was something that we always did. And my dad would always say, like, Lake Superior never gives up her dead. And that stuck in my head all the time. So we had all of these kind of weird experiences as a kid, but that in particular, I don't know, it stuck in my head that if we went to the water, I was going to see something.
Yeah.
some, but it's powerful. Lake Superior's got its own like creepy stories, hundreds of them.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, my uncles lived in Sault Ste. Marie as well before they moved out to BC. So yeah, the Sioux has a like in the back of the head kind of influence as well, just being all across Canada and traveling out to BC. I lived in BC for 3 years. So.
Oh wow. Yeah, it's and you have to go through it when you're taking, our highway to get from one coast to the other. You go through Sault Ste. Marie. Unless you dip into the States, but there's no way around.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, you have to hit the Sioux. But that was Lake Superior for me. So thanks for answering that.
No problem.
That was where I wanted to go to start with anyway, because I was curious. And at some point, I've got some more questions like that for you too. Absolutely. For the people that are just meeting you for the first time, can you give them a little bit of your background? Let them know.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a journalist and have been in news media for the last 20 years. I took my undergrad in archaeology at the University of Toronto. Got involved in student journalism there. So I've been writing since I was like 7 or 8, and just constantly putting back then pencil to paper. I just kind of I had a weird experience when I was 3 or 4 when I lived in British Columbia. And I think that formed a kind of foundation for my interest in the paranormal. And being privileged to grow up in the 1980s with the glut of ghostly pop culture, from the Ghostbusters to the cryptozoological kind of Monster Squad, movie Baby with Sean Young, and all that other stuff, all that lore, the Usborne books, just kind of helped enable me. And then I 90s, teenager in the 90s, the X-Files kind of drew me in further. I find I've because of my archaeological background and journalism career, I have become more skeptical as I've gotten older, but I still love learning about the folklore, the history, because Canadians learn their history through the vehicle of the ghost story.
Yeah.
And we tie into the natural environment throughout our, cryptozoological lore, and our ties to the colonialist past, as well as Indigenous oral traditions as well, through this lore, which I love exploring and talking about.
Well, I'm glad that you did, because it's a great book. So, and are you able to, like, I think that we had talked about just popping that into the comments for folks. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
So there's Eerie Whispers. I can I don't know. I can visit Dundurn Press. I think the link or whatever is available. I'm trying to figure out how to join the chat here.
So do you see it?
Yeah. Here we go. Go back here for a second here. And there. Okay, there we go. Awesome. All right. Sorry about the delay here.
Oh no, it's all good. So what sparked that? Because it's very specific, right? To tackle the reluctance to the relationship with the paranormal. That's very specific. So what prompted that? What inspired you to go down that?
Yeah. Well, multiple things. I launched the Superstitious Times in 2018 because I was idle. I was looking for work, and I was still writing often, but I wanted to write about stuff I wanted to write about. Not to say I didn't like what I was reporting on at various publications, but the paranormal seemed to be because it's 24/7 seasonal news. The only time stories and folklore is shared is during Halloween. So I launched the Superstitious Times to keep it year round, kind of talking to people, TV shows and so forth. And I wanted to kind of cover all aspects of Canadian paranormal culture. And I just kind of ran with it. And I did a feature where I spoke with Michelle DeRoche.
Yeah.
As well as Morgan.
Our network manager and host of Outer Realm and Beyond the Outer Realm, who we all love and adore.
Yeah. And, this is one of my first contacts I kind of picked up throughout my work as a journalist when she worked at Casa Loma. So I reached out to her and then spoke with Morgan Knudsen out in Edmonton, Elliot Van Dusen out in Nova Scotia, and Jason Hewlett out in British Columbia, and just kind of gauge the response of Canadian culture around the paranormal and why we're kind of, I won't say aloof or like we're standoffish about the paranormal. Unless it's like a socially acceptable setting, say around the campfire, a good old fashioned kitchen party on the East Coast, or, so forth. So, but in more mixed company, corporate environments, there's tight-lipped aspect to the Canadian culture. England, of course, it's ingrained, traditional Victorian ghost stories during Christmas time, of course.
Yeah.
And in the US, it's kind of, they capitalize on the dark tourism aspect, and it's very openly discussed in U.S. pop culture, in general culture. It's everywhere there. So that feature I did on the Superstitious Times, I can include that in the link as well. That kind of led me to think more, well, I need to look at this deeper. There's more I can write about this and kind of explore where Canadians go, like, why are Canadians so standoffish? Why are they reluctant to talk about the paranormal? And that's when the book started coming around. Now, a friend of mine was the publisher of Dundurn at the time. He originally tapped me to write a book about cryptozoology, and the pandemic hit, and that kind of got deep sixed. And
everything got deep sixed. It was so frustrating.
Yeah, no, and it was just kind of station to station during that first part of the pandemic. But then I started thinking about, I did the story during the pandemic. I think publication, it was towards the tail end of the pandemic. The worst part was over, but I think I said to him, Kwame, I've got this other story that I'd like to kind of address, and it's Canada's reluctant relationship with this paranormal lore. And he's like, do it, let's do this. And we just like I within a couple of weeks I put together a pitch. The publishing board at Dundurn approved it, thanks to the work of Jason Martin, kind of setting up my presentation and stuff like that. And then I went to work on it, and over like the span of two years, I did the interviews, I did the research, and then the writing, of course.
That was my next question for you. Was how did that background, working as a journalist or as a reporter, affect the approach in how you did your research and storytelling for the book?
Yeah, I think it manifested in just one big long newspaper article almost.
A couple hundred pages. Here we go.
Yeah, and it of course blending it together with the chapters and stuff like that. I think two influences for the book were Colin Dickey's Ghostland, which is a great book. I really appreciated, where he's kind of deconstructing where a lot of the lore changes or becomes more fantastic as time goes on. And then I had been reading a lot of Elizabeth Colbert, her work as well, and she's an environmental reporter, Washington Post and stuff like that. So her book, The Sixth Extinction, it's not paranormal, but the format and how she went and interviewed people and explored a lot of these issues kind of also contributed to the foundation of the book. And then I did lean heavily on interviews because I felt, I have an interest in it, but I felt talking to the people who were at ground zero, the ghost tour guides, the folklorists, the historians, the religious leaders. I spoke to a Muslim sheikh in Mississauga as well. So I think that was important for me to kind of share their voices and explore it more. So it became less about the ghost stories per se, but how Canadians and new Canadians approach ghost stories and why we're reluctant to talk about them.
I have 5 questions for that little paragraph, but I'm going to try very hard not to go scroll on Red Bull. We're just going to, but it's, there's so many factors that shape our perspective and beliefs, right?
Yeah.
But early in the book, you define paranormal for the reader. So did the definition of it change as you dug in further into writing the book, like your own personal?
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff. I looking back at it when I sat on it for a bit and read it when a physical copy was in my hands, and like I really did try to shoehorn as much as I could into that book. So I focused mostly on ghosts and spirits. And there are passing references to UFOs and Bigfoot and cryptozoology, but that's just part of the milieu, right? So, I kind of wanted to just kind of focus on that aspect, and then explore how waves of immigration has changed Canadian perspectives as well. So the first European immigration to the East Coast, of course, and the belief in fairies and the Fae, of course, and so forth. And then of seeing the progression of colonialism from east to west, and looking at different parts of Canada and the influence greatly in Saskatchewan and Alberta of Indigenous beliefs on a lot of the hauntings and the stories and the lore. And just how we share our history. So, the Red River Rebellion, the Northwest Rebellion, British Columbia, the Klondike. So a lot of, I was just shoehorn. I didn't mean to shoehorn it all in, and I presented it like in a natural natural way. But there's a lot I found I jammed in there. And yeah.
But did your personal opinion change, or your personal take? Like, did anything shift for you the more that you researched? Did it give you pause in what you may have had as a perspective or a belief as you dug in? Did something shift for you personally?
It made me love Canada even more. The more I
appreciate you saying that. I love everything about I love Canada.
Yeah. It was just kind of writing this and finishing it up. The edits for the book came during the first couple of months of the threats on Canadian sovereignty. So I was like, so that kind of changed a little bit how I approached it. And I put in a paragraph, just basically, are we just a country about hockey, beer, Tim Hortons? No, we're not. We're much more than that. And then I put it in a side, of course, talking about the threats of annexation and stuff like that. And I just said, for all intents and purposes, this is just about our paranormal culture. And I think what made me kind of go aha was the history of the North. We don't really talk about the territories all that much in Canada, and just knowing that there's a haunted fire station, allegedly haunted fire station up in Rankin Inlet, was fascinating. And just kind of, how did this come about? Where's what's the root of this haunting and this phenomenon happening, right? And just some of the locations, you got the Frank Slide, where the mountain collapsed and wiped out a whole town. And there's a lot of phenomenon that happens around there where people still hear voices in midst the rubble. Bloody falls, oral traditions of the indigenous people sharing behind that. And there's so much up north, and it made me want to kind of go, hey, Yellowknife has a rich history, and there's a lot of phenomena.
I know. Everyone asks, like, where do you want to go on vacation? I'm like, Dawson City and Yellowknife.
Yes, Dawson City too. Yeah, Klondike cake.
Yes.
Kate. I must be hungry or something, right? No.
But yes, that's where I'm wanting to go.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think by the end of it, I found that the East Coast was more open to the paranormal.
Oh, interesting. You're answering all of my questions without me having to ask them. It's brilliant.
And yeah. Go ahead.
Oh no, keep going. I love it. I lived on the East Coast. Actually, my daughter was born on the East Coast, in New Brunswick, and it's a very different lifestyle. I find the northern, because I'm from Northern Ontario, we're laid back to a degree, but not as much as the East Coast. East Coast are a little more open in sharing and open in storytelling and open more with their folklore, and not so much for us in Sault Ste. Marie area.
Yeah, no, it was funny when I met some folks from the East Coast, and when I went to the Halifax Paranormal Symposium, they're like, "Are you from the East Coast?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I was born in Welland, Ontario, and grew up mostly in Ontario. Spent 3 years in BC, but no, it's and they're always surprised. You're from Ontario, and you're that kind of mellow and relaxed." Which I thought was funny.
My daughter tells everyone she's from the East Coast, but she was like 1.5 when we moved from there. But she tells everybody that she's from the East Coast because she's like, Mom, people like East Coast people more than they like people from Ontario. It's like, well, it's kind of hard to argue with that a little bit.
No, when I was out in Calgary visiting my brother, and the Albertans referred to Ontario as Unterrible.
Oh, right.
I kind of got a kick out of that.
My oldest had moved to Calgary like almost 3.5 years ago, maybe close to 4 now, and he's like, he's never come back. He loves Calgary so much.
Nice. Yeah, no, Calgary's awesome. My brother's now out in Port Alberni in Vancouver Island, but
wow.
Yeah, it's I've had also the privilege to travel across the country and seen a lot of spots. So there's that kind of geographical connection to Canada as well for me, which made it really enjoyable to kind of write about parts of Canada I've been to as well.
And I would feel it's exciting when you find somebody that's willing to share, so willing to be that storyteller and that be open to sharing. Sometimes they wait for the quiet moment in the corner of the room when nobody's paying attention. Hey, I got a story. But how was that received? Did you know who that you wanted to speak to right off the top of your head? Like you had a list, or how did it evolve?
I had a list, just of contacts that I had accumulated through my work with the Superstitious Times.
Yeah.
So, Morgan Elliott, and Michelle DeRoche, I spoke to for the book as well.
Yeah.
James White out of Ottawa, who does a seance in Toronto every autumn season.
Yeah.
And, I also did a little digging. I've spoken with Erin Goodpipe from APTN's, like paranormal shows as well. And she was a very amazing contact, and I appreciated like every morsel and detail she shared with me, as well as T-Sock, who I'd spoken to, Mi'kmaq, paranormal investigator. So those were the contacts, and then I researched more. So reaching out to the Muslim community here in Southern Ontario, speaking to an academic from, of course, Carleton, or not Carleton, sorry, Concordia, to talk about Jewish folklore, Dybbuk and Shadim, going into the Caribbean diaspora, and speaking with Zalika Reed Benta. I was looking at her book on the shelf there just to make sure I got her name right. She wrote the story River Momo, which is set in Toronto. Right. Great book that explores Jamaican folklore, talks about duppies. So just kind of adding that element to Canadiana and how our beliefs kind of shift and change with new stories, new ideas, and stuff like that. So that
you were very mindful of not speaking over their voices, like I just did to you. I'm very sorry, but you were very respectful and very mindful in how you approached that. I felt that you were very respectful, and that had to be very conscious for you too, right? To be mindful of how you were sharing that information.
Definitely. I think that's, as you asked before about how my journalism background impacted how I wrote the book. I think that empathy, and I may be skeptical, but I'm also of the mindset you're talking to people who are talking about very personal information, and you just listen. And that's kind of what my approach was, is I'm sharing other people's stories. I need to just listen, share it, and then kind of fold it in, like making some bread or whatever, just folding it in. And I spoke with, sorry, I used to shoot photos for a lecture series here in Toronto. Rue Morgue is a horror magazine, covers horror movies and stuff like that. And my friends Andrea Supasati and Paul Korup, they would do this lecture series, bring in folks like Gary Sherman, who directed Poltergeist 3, and chat about how they did it, the perceptions, the beliefs behind it. And I sat down with him to chat about Canadian cinema and how there's a real lack of supernatural horror from Canadian filmmakers. So when I set out to write the book, I didn't just want to talk about our ghost lore. I wanted to talk about how it was represented in the arts community as well.
I love that.
I worked mostly as an arts and sports reporter, so I felt it incumbent on me to talk about Canadian pop culture when it comes to the paranormal as well. And then, of course, speaking with Lloyd Auerbach about the American approach to the paranormal, and of course, Susan Owens, who wrote The Ghost in art history and stuff like that. She was a great resource from England. So that, I'm an arts nerd. I have over 1,000 CDs, much to the chagrin of my wife. A lot of books, a lot of video games, a lot of movies. So it's
yeah, I know. I love it. And I love when you're posting. I think every time you were posting a new movie, I was like, oh yeah, I loved that one. That one was a great one. Oh, yep, this is a good one too. I just love all of that stuff as well too, right? And I agree. There isn't that representation of movies made by Canadians, right? There's lots filmed in Canada, but not written or produced or made, directed.
Yeah, and I think more of it. I touch on it with Paul in the book. Canada is more in tune with that natural environment, so you will get more creature features being put out by Canadians, or body horror that kind of touches on some of our less than savory moments in history, like the MK Ultra experiments in Montreal with the CIA. So you'll have movies like Videodrome and The Brood, more body horror, and then more natural environment kind of surviving, man against nature kind of aspect, right?
Right. I just gonna pop in here quick so people don't feel we're ignoring them. Hi, Linda Shaw. It has been a while. Thank you so much for popping in. Denise Mitz, it's always nice to see you here too. Carrie, we were just talking about Calgary. Were your ears tingling? Fiona Clark, thank you so much for being here. Steve White, thank you. Good evening, tuning in from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Thank you so very much for being here.
Awesome. Right on. I did a story for Haunted Magazine where I touched on the Scrivener Hotel in Oklahoma City. So that was about haunted locations, going back to my sports reporting. So I was talking about the Pfister in Milwaukee and the Scrivener Hotel in Oklahoma City. And big thanks to Jeff Provine, who is a historian and ghost story collector down in Oklahoma City, for chatting with me about that.
Is there a story that you can share about it in particular? What are the stories about?
Well,
do you remember? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Well, no, the Scrivener. I'm trying to remember. I'm tempted to grab my magazine with the haunted, but I can't remember what issue was. But yeah, no, it was the Pfister Hotel in Milwaukee, of course, is allegedly haunted by the restaurant, the hotelier Pfister. A lot of stories there with regards to his presence. The Pfister had more stories. I think the Scrivener had something similar, where there was alleged homicide of, there was infidelity involved and stuff like that. I think that was more of the Pfister. I might be blending the two together, so apologies.
Hotels are always haunted. I want to know or dig into if there's certain floors. If there's a theme where it's certain floors in hotels that have that paranormal.
Well, the funny thing, I with Canadian haunts, and it's a weird dynamic. So a lot of the old railway constructed hotels have ghost stories. Almost every single one of them that is still standing, and the owners, which most of them are Fairmont, don't want to talk about it, or they keep ghost tours internal. But in Toronto, there's the 8th floor. There's the ghost, the specter of a gentleman in a green vest, and then on the top, the 16th floor or 15th floor, there's a couple other experiences where during SARS, Chrétien held a cabinet meeting at the Royal York Hotel in Toronto, and I just found this out recently because my the HR director, he sat down beside me. He goes, "Yeah, there's a secret stairwell that goes up to this meeting area," and he told me a story about a gentleman who had worked in the hotel for years, and he allegedly hung himself in that stairwell. So people get a weird vibe when they walk up there, and it's not in use very often.
So I, even though this is my job, right? Talking to folks that are crossed over and have been this way since I was a kid, I still left brain that stuff first. Does everybody know that story before they feel weird going up? Are they told about it? So they've already got that little bit of a, it's been planted in there. So now they're going to create that experience for themselves. I'm interested in knowing that part too, right?
Yeah. That story is actually relatively new. I know a lot of people, why are all these haunts so old and Victorian? And I always kind of think, well, that's safer that way because you're at arm's reach. There aren't a lot of people to kind of say, I'm related to these people. Don't talk about them. So it's that Victorian aspect. But I think, the freshness of this, and that's why the Fairmont Royal York doesn't want to have to say, well, there was a suicide in a hall, a stairwell up in the 90s and stuff like that. So in
my head, I assume all hotels have had everything.
Yes. Oh yeah.
I just assume it's all happened here, so chances are there's going to be a story somewhere.
Yeah. And then the Algonquin Resort in Prince, is it Andrew? Yes, Prince Andrews. the Algonquin Resort Spa in New Brunswick, of course, they have multiple stories, and there's always at least one watchman, night watchman, and there's always at least one forlorn bride.
Yeah, lady in white. There's always a lady in white.
Yeah.
Always a child giggling.
Yes. Yeah, and the Algonquin has that too. Yeah, a little boy on the third floor. So, and they have a photo of the dining area where, you know, I tried my darndest to kind of look at this photo and see if I could see a kid in it. I'm like, is it in the chair? Is it pareidolia? Kind of, but they highlight this photo in the one area there, and it's the alleged child ghost that's in at the Algonquin. So it's neat that way, and I find it fascinating when people, oh, there. And my son was on the ghost walk with us, and he was like, I see him right there, and he's like, my son's 9. I think at that time he was 7. So. Yeah, it was. It's kind of fun seeing his perspective on things too.
Yeah.
He's sensitive, and we went to another hotel, which was a converted B&B.
Right.
If you lived in New Brunswick, you probably know the Dorchester Jail.
Yep.
Yeah. So we were there, and we were on the dark side, and he ran down past me as I was doing the interview with the owner, and she was telling me about it. And he ran right back. He went all the way to the end of the dark side and then came all the way back. And I go, what's the matter? I don't like it down there. I'm like, okay. And then she goes, oh, I'll tell you about that spot. So we went down, and it was allegedly where, well, not allegedly, it was where the people were hanged, came through the chute. And you had death row there with the people who were waiting for their execution. Were lined up and would be woken up at like 2 o'clock in the morning with somebody dangling down, right? So that was interesting seeing my son's response to that. But going back to Algonquin, it was really interesting, the child story. And I always ask when I'm doing a feature on a haunt if there's a paper trail to, you know, these deaths. And if I had more resources available to me, I would go down to the historical places to pull any death certificates and stuff like that, newspaper clippings I can.
But maybe that will happen with the next book. You'll have those resources available to you at that place.
Absolutely.
It'll be there. Carrie, that's interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Train tracks are built to follow ley lines. That's why haunts are bad in train stations. So an event that I did in October was at the station in Smiths Falls with the train tracks right behind it, and was part of the train where you'd buy your tickets and stuff like that, now a theater. So it definitely has some stuff happen in it. We did after, for sure. Steve White is sharing. That's awesome. Yeah, the Skirvin Hotel in Oklahoma City definitely has a haunted reputation. Most NBA visiting basketball players refuse to stay there because of its reputation.
Yep.
So then, do we make the haunts what they are, or do we make them bigger by adding that energy to it? Do we evolve it because we talk about it, we feed into it? It's an interesting thing to chat about, right?
Yeah, and I touch on the Philip experiment in the book, and that aspect of a tulpa or a thought form.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that energy, you know, I use the example, there's an episode of the TV show Supernatural where they went to a location. It was a cabin in the woods, and the haunting became more progressive as the people were writing on this bulletin board, sharing their stories about this haunted location and adding to the haunting. And then the haunting began to change more. And then when the brothers, of course, caught on to this, they changed it themselves. But that aspect of the tulpa, which I thought was kind of funny, because they walked into the cabin and then they found the Buddhist symbol beside the blue oyster cult symbol. It's funny, right? But and I think a lot of these hauntings do pick up And Snowball,
Yeah.
because we talk about them more. That's probably why the Banff Springs, the Dancing Bride, kind of captivates me, because it's probably, I find, one of the most talked about hauntings in Canada. But there haven't been. There'll be people sharing the story of the bellhop at the Banff Springs, Sam McCauley. This elderly gentleman in an older uniform helped me out to my room. You'll hear more experiences about that than seeing a sighting of the Dancing Bride in the Rob Roy room, right? So it's interesting. And then a story like that, there would be a paper trail. With Sam McCauley, there is a paper trail, and he's buried in the one cemetery just down the mountain from Banff Springs. So it's fascinating how these two stories kind of coexist in the same location, but one is rooted in fact, and the other one is rooted in kind of
lore.
Lore.
Heidi, thanks for popping in and being here. Good evening, Carrie Lynn and Brian. Much love from Boulder, Colorado.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Heidi.
We've been hitting all the questions. Even I had you've written on pop culture, X-Files, modern paranormal TV. So it shapes belief systems, right? So that was where do you think Canada or Canadian media has helped the conversation about hauntings? Where is it maybe flattened it or cheapened it, or have they encouraged it?
Yeah, well, that was one really cool thing. I know we're not out and about with TV shows and programming about Canada, but there are a lot of production companies that do content, paranormal content, like haunted hospitals and Paranormal 911 and all that stuff. Yeah. So, and they're Tobin Long, of course, who I appeared on 4 episodes of Haunted Hospitals in season 4. And Tobin Long was the producer and did the interview, and I chatted with him about Canadians opening up for the shows that he did. And I think the Canadian format for paranormal shows is less about, that night vision kind of thing aspect, and more about
jump scares.
Yeah, and sharing more of the, the talking heads, the people who experienced it, the hauntings in a hospital, and then kind of sort of reenacting it to illustrate it. Yeah. I mean,
there's an emotional connection and a trauma that is there for some people after, and so it's very personal. I feel what we're receiving from people.
Yeah, and then Aaron Goodpipe has been on Paranormal Revenge and talking about a lot of those traumatic, more, I guess not, I won't say controversial, but the stories of like spousal abuse and stuff like that, and amplifying certain energies that are in a house. So, there's a more of an academic and sociological approach. And of course, Creepy Canada was such a anchor for a lot of paranormal lore. I think that was my first introduction to the story of the Angel Inn.
Ghost
My
daughter's got a great video in that bathroom.
So I think Creepy Canada is probably one of the biggest things, and beyond the haunting, the team, Corinne, Kelly and Leanne, they've done a great job. And of course, even going back further with Girly Ghost Hunters, where you've got Dana Newkirk. Before she moved to the U.S., she was on that show with her sister and 2 others, and that kind of, they explored a lot of the Ontario haunts. And you're seeing a little bit more like of the kind of
ATN has a lot of shows.
Yes, definitely. And Sean Leonard, of course, and Aaron Goodpipe, and the guys at Snipe have the Grand River.
The Grand.
CBC had Ghosted, which actually adds a different perspective of the LGBTQ plus community.
Where's the one with the funeral home?
Oh wow, I'm trying to remember now.
You know which one I'm talking about, though, right?
Yes, yeah. I
don't remember the name of it either, but I don't even know if it's still running, which I really apologize for, folks. But
and of course, YouTube has allowed a lot of Canadian. There's investigators from Winnipeg. I know that go around to haunted locations in Manitoba.
Well, TikTok and YouTube have changed things too, right? Like, you don't necessarily have to have the TV show anymore to be out there. That that those media platforms have allowed more people the opportunity to share stories as well too, whether it's done with data research or if it's done as entertainment for clickbait.
Yes,
but it's still getting out there.
Yeah, and I of course I spoke with them and I did the investigation of the Alexander Keith's, of course, but men's. Here we go. I'm trying to look it up here. Apologies. Lomar Men's and Chelsea LaSalle. They have their own show out in the East Coast as well, and of course. Hauntingly Krista, of course. There's a lot of folks that have utilized social media and platforms like YouTube to kind of get out there, explore Canadian lore, and share the history as well.
Yeah. Steve is asking a question. I don't know if we will be able to, but question, I know there has to be a reason behind this, but why do you think so many people witness seeing a woman dressed in a white dress at different locations all around the world?
Yeah, I think, it's all around the world. In different places, it has a different kind of context. The Krasui and the Manananggal in Philippines and Indonesia, La Llorona in Mexico. And the stories, I think a lot of them, I find it fascinating. And I would love to kind of, it'd be great to talk about this is Evelyn Hollow out in England. She would be great to chat about the idea of the lady in white. I think a lot of it has to do with, the latent misogyny and sexism, of course, and these ideal perspectives of women in North American culture, in places with high death rates at birth. You will get these, like the story of the Krasui and Manananggal, because they feed on pregnant women. So the folklore around that, they're in white. And then they, if you hear the Manananggal, you got to, protect your pregnant wife, because, there are these issues of infant mortality, SIDS, during the Irish potato famine. Of course, you have the lore of the changeling kind of playing into that as well. The fae replacing a child, with a changeling, and
it's the woman in white waiting for her man to come back and dies at sea.
Yep, in North America.
Like, she's longing. I'm like, I'm gonna be the swamp hag. That's what I'm gonna be.
Yeah. The Bell Island Witch, the what was it? The Bell Island Witch in Newfoundland. It's in North America. Yes, it is definitely that forlorn bride aspect, and that's the context here. I know I was focusing on South Asia, but in North America, Canada, you have Montmorency Falls in Quebec, you have Banff Springs, you have Algonquin Resort Spa. You have the Prince of Wales Hotel in Niagara-on-the-Lake. So there's all these stories of forlorn brides crying. And I think it's that kind of Victorian ideal. And I suggested in the book that people must have been reading Wuthering Heights. Because it's like
romanticized, right?
Yeah, it's the romanticized of Catherine and Heathcliff and all all these characters. And it almost seems part of these like forlorn brides. And of course, La Llorona as a different context, of course. A wife, her husband's cheating on her, and she drowns their two kids in the river. And she walks the earth out of guilt and vengeance, and kind of like that while weeping. So it's fascinating. I love how
it is fascinating, but I get tired of the broken woman story.
I do too. That's why I was kind of mocking it after a while. It's like, this is too much.
It is. It is too much. Hi, Jen. Jen is sharing. Only time I've ever seen a ghost was in the hospital. There's lots there. A lot of hospitals turned into condos. They did that in Sault Ste. Marie.
I think they're doing that in Edmonton right now too.
Shannon, it's good to see you. Swamp hags forever. Yes. Joanne Osario mentioned ghostly encounters.
Right on. Yes. No. That was the other movie. I forgot to mention it, but Grave Encounters. You just kind of triggered something in my head there, Joanne. Thank you. Grave Encounters was one of those few Canadian productions that kind of touched on the supernatural and that trope of paranormal investigators going into an asylum, which I thought was cool, and it added that element of ghost adventure setup, and the cocksure host, and he's like, I know all this stuff, and it's all we're gonna do this to exaggerate it a little bit more, and then and of course his hubris is his downfall, and it wouldn't be a horror movie if there wasn't a downfall.
So kind.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to touch because I was thinking through the week when I was thinking about you coming on the show, I was also thinking about my daughter. My daughter is very much into academia. She loves debating and questions and being in school and all of this stuff. She loves it. And she had taken some psychology courses and different courses, right? So she's done her first year of her PhD, and,
awesome.
and through all of this, she's like, Mom, they really hack on people like you. And I went, I know, it's okay. It's all good. And she's like, it's from that, and I get it. And so I understand, but I appreciate that those perspectives as well too. So the question I had was, you've covered parapsychology courses, the academic side of the paranormal. So how does university or research world in Canada respond when you bring up ghosts or PSI and hauntings? And are there serious conversations starting to happen behind the scenes?
It comes in waves. I know I spoke with Paul Kingsbury for an article about AI impacting paranormal investigation for Haunted magazine, but most academics just shut down. I've been trying. Years ago in 2011, I wrote a feature in the Town Crier about how much the Toronto ravines could have a mountain lion population, because in southern Ontario there have been sightings of cougars and so forth in rural areas. So how would it be able to sustain a population? And of course, eventually, I did speak with somebody at the Toronto Zoo, but to try and do a follow-up now and talk with the Toronto Zoo and talk to a zoologist that focuses on big cats, I'm still waiting to hear back from the zoo. I every so often I'll send a note like this. Listen, I want your perspective on it, and they were going to get me to chat with the president of the zoo to kind of talk about roadside zoos and the lack of policy in Ontario. So it would have taken more of a political skew if I took that route. But
is it fear of being ridiculed?
Sorry?
Is it fear of being ridiculed? Like fear of being ostracized within their community if they talk publicly about
it? Is the peer review aspect. I know when I was taking archaeology, they did their level best to push pop culture out of the way. So the kids like me grew up on Indiana Jones. That aspect that originally drew people to taking archaeology in university was kind of dismissed. So Lara Croft, the video game, anything related to that, and just kind of focusing on the factual evidence. So I think
such a blend, though. Like if you look at Greek mythology or Egypt, like there was such a big belief in.
Oh yeah, no, and that's that. I mean, that would be the social anthropological thing, and that's kind of, you know, if I went back, I would probably go the social anthropological route, because I mean, my book is pretty much a big, so it's through the social anthropological lens, but I think you know, it all depends on what it is. So Dale Jarvis out in Newfoundland is a folklorist, is involved at Memorial University. Folklorists are easy to chat with. They're talking in the context of folklore.
Right.
And when it comes to actually talking about, well, ghosts, are they legit? Are they real? There's apprehension. Even though in the past, in the 70s, when I was going through a lot of the New Horizon journals, which was sci and paranormal and pertaining to a lot of the same people who were behind the Philip experiment, there were University of Toronto professors from the physics department and stuff like that involved and engaged, actively writing about, you know, laws of physics and sci and so forth. So it's interesting. And, you know, when I look back at Ghostbusters, it really kind of hit the nail on the head with what was going on socially. So, you know, the beginning of the movie, the guys get kicked out of the university campus. They cut the funding. And that was actually happening, right? Yeah. And, you know, Duke University got rid of it. And then you got the Rhine Institute out of it, right? So a lot of these things were happening in the 80s. And I think there was a shift in academia where they weren't going to, unless it was a social science, they weren't going to kind of put funding into the science aspect of it. So it is tough. I remember in one of the interviews I had for the article for the Superstitious Times that parlayed itself into the book, Jason Hewlett was trying to reach out to a biologist about Ogopogo. Oh. And he was openly mocked in an email response. Like, so it all depends on the professor you get. And what they study. So Paul Kingsbury out in BC, he's a geography professor. So it's like, and it all.
Skeptic is good. Be skeptical. Everybody should be. Even clients coming to me should be somewhat skeptical, but be open-minded. Be an open-minded skeptic. Be open-minded. When you are so rigid, you're closing down an opportunity to learn something you may have never. Like didn't even know. So there's just, I don't know, it's hard when you reach that really rigid person and so reluctant to open up. They just refuse to see from a different perspective. And maybe it's fear, like for different reasons.
Yeah, I think professional you know, integrity is probably the biggest fear for the academic community. And I think, you know, up in Thunder Bay, it was the first time I had done table tipping, and I had used the Spirit board. And a lot of that might have been just superstition in the back of my head. Right. Less about, you know, academia and looking, well, I am a skeptic, but I'm very open-minded and I want to learn. I think that's just what's come with.
I appreciated that. I appreciated that. I did this event called Dining with the Dead, right? At different restaurants. And there was a fellow, I go around to all the tables. Thank you so much for coming. Here's how your night's going to unfold. So everybody understands. I don't sell the tickets for those events at that particular, most of the venues. I don't sell the tickets, the venues do. So I don't even know who's going. I just show up and do my thing. And this right at the very end, I was leaving. I was in Bowmanville at 3-6 Kitchen, and I couldn't leave because this guy was coming through. So I pointed to the guy that was sitting in the corner, and I'm like, "Here you go. Here's your brother smelling smoke. I got all this stuff." So I share all this stuff, and he's like, "I don't even believe in this stuff." And I went, "That's okay. I'm going to sleep fine tonight. Like, here's your stuff. Like, your brother's coming through anyway, so you don't have to believe in me, but here's your stuff." And he wrote me a beautiful email, like a few days later going, hey, like I really went just to have dinner with my wife because she was interested in what you had to do. I didn't even want to be there. And he's like, it was amazing. And so I it made me cry because that, in a good way, that's what you want. You just want people to be open-minded.
Mm-hmm.
I feel though it's a slippery slope. If you hook them in with ghosts, then you're going to start talking about the cryptids and aliens, and then because you can't exclude that. It's all part of it.
Yeah, and I think with Canadian culture, I find a lot of people are really apprehensive of going down that rabbit hole because they don't want to be seen as woo-woo. Canadians are very polite and respectful, and we don't want to be seen as too gregarious, I think would be a nice way of putting it.
Sure. My dad still asks me, are you still doing that witchy stuff? And I'm like, yeah. Yep, it's my full-time job. He's like, can't even believe that this is a discussion that we do every day. It boggles his mind. I'm sorry to cut you off mid-sentence there. So I don't get in trouble. I need to do our station ID. So we're going to do our station ID really quickly.
Yep.
So folks, if you are just joining us now, thank you so much for being here. Everybody that's in the chat or that is listening, I appreciate and I'm grateful for all of you. You are listening to Spirit Switchboard, and I am your host, Carrie Lynn Shellhorn. You are listening to us live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 in the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. If you are interested in finding out more about the shows and the hosts that UPRN has to offer, you can head to uprntalkradio.com. There is thousands of archives for you to check out, and it's not all high strangeness and paranormal. There is something for everyone. Today we have Brian Baker, author of Eerie Whispers, on discussing Canada's reluctant relationship with its ghostly lore.
Awesome. And thanks for your comments, Steve. I saw that. And back on November 1st, I had the awesome privilege of dining at Five Fishermen. And as soon as the manager came around and knew what I wrote about, he was like, he just shared everything about his experiences. He took me on a tour. So amazing. One side of the Fisherman restaurant is used to be a school. And the lady from, the King and I, the actual governess who taught the King of Siam's children or whatever, and she came back to Canada, or she came to Canada and settled in Nova Scotia. That was her schoolhouse there, the one side. So you got cool. One big kind of historical moment. And on the other side, it was, the morgue, the town morgue. So it survived, the explosion, of course, 1917 explosion in the harbor. But you mentioned that the Titanic and bodies were, of course, taken and put in that morgue. So it is quite possible. He told me that the people will sit in the one spot, which used to be where the elevator was, where they'd hoist and pull up the flatbed and move stuff. So he pointed out that, and then the back room is where they see a little girl as well. So it's quite possible that the people, the revenants of the Titanic are still kind of around in Five Fishermen's.
Do you find, since the book has come out, that more people are approaching you with their stories, or more people are opening up or reaching out to you? I haven't had that. I've had, the Superstitious Come on, folks, if you are listening, reach out.
So, it was great to get up to Thunder Bay because, I can talk with the guys at the Snipe. I've been meaning to reach out to them because they visited a location in Oshawa for one of their Grand River investigations. But I've always there's been a few people that have reached out since 2018. But a lot of it's me actively pursuing the stories. And I am open to people reaching out. I encourage that on the website and stuff like that. But I know it's always been me kind of actively reaching out to the communities that these locations or this phenomenon is happening in, and then interviewing them.
So do you see people getting braver about hauntings, or is it like a guilty pleasure?
Since I started the Superstitious Times, I've seen a growing interest, and I think the biggest catalyst behind that is that shared trauma of the pandemic. I think, with that talk of mortality and stuff like that, it made people kind of like, and then
that brings us right back to like spiritualism and when it all started right after the wars. Everybody needed some hope.
Yes, exactly.
Everybody wanted to connect with the people that were crossed, and they needed hope and connection.
Yeah.
Along come Fox Sisters, and away we go.
Yeah. Yes. and then we have Lilydale from that whole experience, and it's a hopping place. So my train of thought just went off the rails there. Sorry.
That's okay, Carolyn Lee. Thank you so much for being here. Carolyn is asking or sharing, I was wondering if Nova Scotia would be considered reluctant believers because of the topics you just discussed. The stories seem to be easy in that area for sharing. Wondering if the Canadian coasts are more full of stories. Is it Aboriginal on the BC coast?
That's a wonderful question, Carolyn. Thank you for that. I would say Nova Scotia is probably, out of all the provinces, Nova Scotia and Newfoundland are probably the most open because of that maritime lore, the acceptance that, a lot of the male figures and families were fishermen, and they'd go out and you didn't know if they were going to come back. So that acceptance of death and acknowledging it in kind of, the lore behind tokens and the lore behind forerunners and a lot of that kind of spiritual aspect. I find, and Nova Scotia is also, I find, has the most writers of the paranormal. So you've got Steve Vernon Oikel, Darrell Walsh, Elliot Van Dusen, of course, does the Halifax Paranormal Symposium, does an incredible job. And there's so much hunger for it in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, I find. And
it's also where the immigrants landed on the coast, right? So that was a question that I'm coming back to as this was triggering that. Like, what surprised you the most about newcomers' beliefs or fears and ghost stories having blended or clashed with, Canadian narratives?
Yeah, and the Indigenous stories I find throughout my work as a paranormal journalist, they get misappropriated and changed, especially Ogopogo. Nahaha EQ was just a spirit in the water that they would, give thanks to through like tobacco ceremony. Thank you for the fish. Thank you for the water, the resource.
They're in relationship with.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and then, there's a boom. People are coming into the interior of BC and they want more people to travel there. So they borrow Ogopogo from a Scottish song and, name the sea serpent Ogopogo, right, and then do a whole marketing campaign around it. So it really is neat how stuff like that can blow up. And I know I talk about Wendigo a bit in the book, but a lot of Indigenous folks do not like talking about or even acknowledging it.
No, but Thomas Seawood does.
Yes, he does. Yes, he talks about Sabe is his bellywick, but he's I've spoken with Thomas before about Sasquatch.
And his thoughts about Wendigo and Sasquatch are fascinating to me. I loved having him. He was on the show, and it was great. I would love to have him back on.
Yeah, he's a colorful character. I think I spoke with him for a feature on the lack of diversity in the paranormal community in North America. So that's I spoke with him about that regarding the Indigenous beliefs of Sabe. So I mean, the Wendigo is such an interesting entity because it blurs the lines between cryptid and spirit.
Yeah.
And my friend, who I often kind of use our discussion, I went to university with Michael White, who's Anishinaabe Bear Clan. He said basically it's the mindset. Somebody gets so consumed with greed that they become selfish and they kind of cannibalize those around them and so forth. But in the Métis stories that I learned about from George Beaudry, who was a storyteller in Manitoba, he shared the story of Om Septur, as well as Rougarou, and these stories that kind of blur the line between cryptid and spirit. And the Rougarou is kind of like the Métis version of the Wendigo. You see that kind of similarities between the storytelling. Right. And then it's that natural fear of being vulnerable to the environment, being so hungry and starved that you end up resorting to, Donner Party antics, right? So
yeah. I think Thomas said he felt they were Sasquatches that were pushed out of their communities and then go rogue. The ones that went rogue, so they're pushed out.
Yeah,
and that makes sense with what or falls in line with what you were saying as well too.
Yeah.
Were there stories or communities or locations that you wanted to include in Eerie Whispers but couldn't? Whether people backed out or material felt too sensitive, or was there a long list? How did you edit?
Oh, well, I think the structure of the book actually helped me kind of rein in, and of course the first round of hard edits with my editor really helped out. But I think I kept it to a geographical structure, like went from region to region.
Oh, yeah.
I had a 60,000 word limit, so it was very, very practical. I'm like, I know my limit. I'm not going to go over it, or if I do, it'll be very little. And the gentleman who wrote the foreword, Jeff Dupuis or JJ Dupuis, he said just trust the process. I was so wrapped up, and this needs to be perfect. It needs to be indelible. It needs to be perfect right off the bat. And he goes, you're going to give yourself an embolism and you're not going to write a book. So just trust the process. And I think that kind of led me to structuring it. I had the people I wanted to speak with. If any interviews fell through, I wanted to speak with Andrea Supasati originally, and she kind of asked me to reach out to Paul Corp. And I knew both of them well. Interviews changed, they shifted. A new interview would pop up. I spoke with Mark Leslie, who's written a lot of paranormal books in Canada as well. Sudbury, Hamilton, Ottawa. And, I emailed Andrew Hines. So if I didn't get an interview with them, I would email the questions. So John Robert Colombo, and I've got a nice story to share about John Robert Colombo recently. It was awesome. But I emailed them and they sent their responses back via email, and I included that.
Oh, brilliant.
So I adapted on the fly. Had this. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I'm sorry.
I was just going to repeat myself, but go ahead.
You had mentioned towards the beginning of the show that you feel that you became a little more skeptical through writing. Is it really skeptical, or can you talk about that a little bit more? Like there was no becoming a little more comfortable with uncertainty.
I'm very relaxed. I think I maybe the word skeptical. I cast a more critical eye. Maybe I think that might be more accurate. And it's just like, well, what's happening? I don't immediately jump to anything supernatural. Like my kids will come to me and we'll talk about stuff. What are the options? You got to sometimes think outside the box. You know, actually just yesterday, my colleagues, the management were installing TVs in the office, and they were joking with me because they had the stud finder and they're like, oh, look at this. There's some weird stuff going on here. I'm like, oh. And then, like, my dad was a carpenter, worked in construction. I worked with Sparkies while I was in university. Electricians, sorry. A little inside baseball talk, calling them Sparkies. But
I have a son that's in his third year of electrician's apprenticeship.
Oh, awesome. Right on. No, that's cool. Congrats. And you know, I'm like talking to them. I'm like, well, obviously there's something behind there. There's a conduit of some type. And sure enough, they went down. They talked to the people. There's a whole fire like alert system. I'm like, well, there you go. There's your issue with the stud finder, right? So it's like, but I'm that's like
first.
Yes.
And when all of that has been, you know, worked through, if there's something left, then it's interesting.
Yes, and I'm of that mindset. You know, like there's probably 90% of stuff can be explained, but that 10%, that 1 to 10% bracket, that's the aha. Like, what is doing this? What's causing it? And I think you know, I really like, you know, there's a lot of scientists, high profile scientists, and very critical thinkers that have said, you know, there are things we don't know, like Neil deGrasse Tyson or Jane Goodall talking about Bigfoot, and you know. The gentleman, his name escapes me. He was in the wheelchair. Physicist.
Sorry.
I know string, you're talking about. Yeah, and string theory and stuff. There's stuff that it's just, you know, I liked in the movie, The Haunting, or the TV series Haunting of Hill House, where the gentleman. Good. Yeah, he's. I don't call it supernatural. I call it preternatural, because it's not yet is not yet there. So it's like we're in that process of trying to learn this stuff. Our technology is getting more vast, and our technology is interfering more. Like we have so many like frequencies and waves that are going around, whether it's connecting our phones to our stereos. So there's a lot more interesting phenomenon happening. So I think I guess I'll say I'm skeptical. I like on a scale of 1 to 10, like 5 being in the middle, 1 being skeptical, 10 being believer. I would say I'm about a 4. I'd like to kind of rationalize everything first and look at the history and look at the influences on Stephen Hawking. Yeah, thank you, Sandy. I want to see the influences first, because I always kind of default to the Philip experiment. Right. Thinking how much the mind can impact. And we talked about how our ghost stories kind of snowball, and then they change over time, like broken telephone. So I'm like, find the root, find the paper trail. I know it's hard in a lot of instances, especially if you're investigating a haunted location in a place that's war torn and those historical records are gone because of war.
Some of those places I struggle with, like, I mean, as a working medium, people tend to, they either want to overshare or like it's better to not know anything. And I don't like hearing like, so Tommy is our resident ghost. And I'm like, how do you know it's really Tommy? Or like, are you sure there's not a Billy Bob too? Like there's, you know, like there's, I just, when I hear like, these are the ghosts that are here, we've got these 5, I'm like, I bet you there's still more to those. So we can start with this, but like, do you know for sure? Like, or different people, like these other people waiting in the wings for the right person to show up so that they can come forward.
And that's
again, right?
Yeah, and that's when history plays in, and that's why, you know, Elliot Van Dusen, I took a parapsychology course with him with PPRI, and basically it's a social science, right? So you explore the history of the location, and that's the stuff I nerd out about. Like that's the paper trail.
I love history.
Yeah, and it's so awesome, and the geography as well. Like what's underneath the house, right? What's causing it? Like, is there iron? Is it limestone? Is it this? Is it that? So, and the different, is it methane gas? Like kind of like, I want to rule out everything first in what we know before making that jump or leap to anything paranormal. Yeah. But I'm very fascinated and I want to learn, because there's certain things that I've seen mediums like yourself do, and I'm like, wow, like that's awesome. Like I want to know more. I want to know how the sausage is made. And
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Like, because I grew up in Northern Ontario with nobody around doing this. You know, like, so there was no influence for me, really.
Yeah.
I found out about my great-grandfather doing this afterwards. But I didn't know that at the time. But we found newspaper articles about him when I was an adult.
Awesome.
Reading tea leaves, and there's a reporter interviewing him about giving readings and stuff like that, and I had no clue about it. But when you're talking about, I was thinking about when you talk about the land and is it gas, is it all of these things? I think about that with signs as well too, right? Like, I always say, like, if you find a dime in a Walmart parking lot, you just got lucky. That's not dead folks trying to get your attention, right? Like but we want it to be the sign, and so many of us inside want it, that connection and hope, and for many different reasons. Again, fear of not knowing what's going to happen when we die, or our loved ones okay. We're wanting those connections. But
yeah, it's funny you mentioned.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
I just go right down cryptids too, because I like comic books and all of that kind of stuff. So I go from ghosts to cryptids really quickly.
Oh yeah, definitely. Likewise, I love the natural environment and animals, so I'm always kind of looking at that. It's funny you mentioned the dime story, because I'm the second book signing that I had for Eerie Whispers. We're at Indigo, and my wife got freaked out because I picked up a dime outside the bookstore as I was leaving, and then we went down to the food court to grab a quick bite to eat, and I picked up another dime. And I know it's a location where there's going to be change falling out, but I was like, she like kind of looked at me, and her mom's from Campbellton, New Brunswick, right? So there's that East Coast kind of, somebody's obviously thinking about you on the other side kind of thing. And
did you check the years?
I did not, actually. I should have.
Yeah, sometimes that's when it gets even weirder, is if you check the year, because sometimes it will be the year of your birth or the year of your loved one's passing. Sometimes it pushes that experience to something a little more when you check the date.
Okay, no, I'll keep that in mind next time. I did not know that. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, we've just been, you know what? You've answered all these questions as we've been rolling. It's like you do this for a living or something. Just like fun question, a location in Canada you think is underrated in terms of hauntings and needs more attention?
Oh, that was one of my goals when I started the Superstitious Times, is to kind of shed light on locations that weren't as well known. And, I love, the Centennial Building in Whitby holds a warm spot in my heart because growing up there.
Right.
And, the Haney House in I lived in Maple Ridge, BC. So I actively went and pursued a location in Maple Ridge, BC to write about. And the Haney House, of course, came up, and there's a lot of history with that place.
Is there a location that you would encourage people to learn more about then?
Montmorency Falls in Quebec. I love that story. And it's a very old story. And of course, unfortunately, it is a lady in white story.
Okay.
You
shared this in Thunder Bay. Didn't you share this in Thunder Bay?
Yes. Yeah. My six picks are, 5, and then I added the bonus one, and the bonus one was Montmorency Falls. I think that's such a pivotal, from the colonialist lens, it's a pivotal moment in Canadian history, where you had the 7 Years' War going on between France and Britain, and then you had, that it was like a month before the Plains of Abraham, and then this battle in Montmorency, where newly betrothed couple, and he volunteers for the militia, and those movies, a guy talks about, oh, I've got this girl at home, we're gonna get married, we're gonna have a family, that guy's gonna die, right? So
yeah. It's like
so
the first couple that has sex in a horror movie, what's
yes,
gonna happen.
yes, exactly. So it's one of those stories, and of course forlorn and Victorian trope, throws herself off the falls and falls beneath. But there's that aspect of the landscape. I mean, Montmorency Falls is it's a higher elevation than Niagara Falls.
Wow.
So people kind of learn about the fact that Niagara Falls isn't the highest waterfall in Canada.
Right.
Montmorency has got it beat. But it's also the history of Quebec and English relations, and even Indigenous, because certain Indigenous nations were on either side of, during that time, the 7 Years' War. So it's a fascinating kind of point in Canadian history that a lot of people don't know about or don't remember, outside of the teachers teaching the Battle of Plains of Abraham and all the agreements afterwards. So I really do like that story. There's a romantic element. As a reader myself, I love that kind of storytelling vibe that has.
Yeah, it brings people in.
And the allure of the waterfalls. I mean, I know I was born in Welland, and I saw Niagara Falls countless times growing up as a kid. Grandparents lived in Fawn Hill, which was just up Highway 20 from Niagara. And I got the chance to actually be behind the falls with my office trip. And I was like, the power of the falls just coming down is it's mesmerizing. I'm such a nerd with stuff like that. Thunder Bay, the Sleeping Giant. I was like sitting there right on the coast of Lake Superior, and I was like, I could sit here all day.
The morning sunsets were stunning.
Oh yes,
stunning,
definitely.
Okay, I'm just gonna pull up a couple of these. Carolyn is sharing. Carolyn, I wonder that myself. When people are restricted to the history of the location or specific lost one, can they not be attracted to a location? Is the location vibrating at a different level to have others not just say their loved ones? All good questions.
I am. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Keep going. Sorry, Sandy.
I just want to make sure I put them all. I'm being mindful of our time. We have about 10 minutes. Sandy is sharing. I found a dime while I was walking in the woods with the dog. That's weird. It literally froze. Did you check the date? Don't forget to check the date. I did miss. Steve was. I don't know if you saw that, but he said, thanks, I've got to run. Absolutely enjoyed tuning into the show tonight. Love the show. Love your guest. You guys have an amazing weekend. Catch you guys next time. Thank you very much. Okay. Sorry. Where were you going to go?
Yeah. Awesome. I forgot what I was going to say. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. A question that I had for you, kind of like winding down. There was 2 questions. So you can answer both or one. We have about 10 minutes. So for listeners who have had an experience but feel shy about sharing it, what would you say to them about why their story matters to the bigger picture of the Canadian paranormal history?
It's keeping track of history, and every person manages their experiences, of course. So I mean, your history isn't just relegated to the movers and shakers. It's to the people, of course. So the more stories we share from Canadian lore, your experiences, the more it kind of lends credence and opens that discussion up with regards to what is a ghost, what is the afterlife, what is, the ability to kind of reach out and touch someone psychically and get their story and stuff like that. And it makes us more comfortable with the unknown, to explore that curiosity.
Yeah. I agree. When we open up and share our story, we're giving other people the same permission, right? To hold space and feel safe without that judgment. Oh, Steve is back already. So he said, okay, I'm back momentarily. I got you shared over to my personal site. Thank you very much. Next time you see Michelle DeRoche, well, I talk to her frequently. Tell her I bought Jack Kenna a haunted wig for Christmas. That's funny. That's very funny.
I'm curious about the haunted wig. That's piqued my interest for sure.
Yeah, that would too. There's more to that story, and we all want to know. Okay, the last question that I had for you. Well, I've got others, but mindful of time. Looking ahead, what do you think the next decade of Canadian paranormal culture looks like? Are we on the verge of embracing our ghostly voice, or do you think, that reluctance will hang on a little bit more?
I think it will hang on a little bit. It'll always be in the back. Canadians are very proper, and we are talkers, but we're kind of rooted in kind of finding the rational explanation, I find. But I think
not making other people uncomfortable.
Without making other people uncomfortable, exactly. So yeah. I think there is loosening up as we speak, and I'd love talking about this. So I could see myself writing about this topic again and exploring maybe more hyper-local focus. But I think, UFO talk is becoming more open, both at in politics and so forth. You're seeing more talk about folklore and cryptozoology, and kind of a return to kind of folklore and sharing that story as we bury ourselves deeper into technology. So I think it's almost a release from the technology that we have to revisit something in nature.
Well, stepping away from all of that frequency.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that kind of parlays, like when May comes around, I do want to pitch a second book to the publisher and say, I want to write about Canada's relationship with its cryptozoological lore.
Yeah.
So, and that would definitely, that's something I really want to explore, because we're more in tune with nature as Canadians, from the Courrier de Bois to the Klondike Gold Rush, and just living off the land, the Central European immigration waves to Saskatchewan and Alberta. So.
And so heavy Indigenous, like
yes,
stories that are there too. It's yeah.
And Thomas Seward would be great to talk with. Just in kind of going back to that well, and speaking with George Baudry as well.
Carolyn is asking, how do you think AI? Let's pull this back up. How do you think AI will influence or interfere with this topic, if reality versus entertainment?
I'm already seeing it as AI is getting so much more realistic. I'm seeing people posting videos of giant anacondas and like swallowing like stuff, and you see those videos of the polar bears climbing up onto the side of the ship, and it's like that's fake, but it's becoming more and more realistic every day. That you're like, you got to look at certain things. Like there are these, my son's watching YouTube, and he's watching this video of a photograph with Hugh Jackman, Tom Holland, and some nondescript director looking guy. And the person is deconstructing this AI photo, and it looks exactly like Tom Holland, and it looks exactly like Hugh Jackman. And they're saying, well, they're not the same height. Tom Holland's shorter than Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
So, and it's like one person will see, well, the lighting is off on that. So they're showing how to deconstruct AI photos. But at first glance, like AI is like really, so, if somebody takes a photo and it makes an AI photo of a bunyip in Australia and tries to pass it off as legit, it's starting to blur the lines a bit now.
And is it making people more skeptical then?
It'll be people will be 100% more skeptical. But with visual evidence, that we've had these moments before with the spirit photographs, of course, Mary Todd Lincoln with, and that was a whole scandal for the photographer.
Yeah.
And then, you get these moments where technology, people keep presenting technological evidence like CCTV footage and all this, and it'll come and go. People will be very, very strident with their opinions on it, and then as time goes on, there'll be an acceptance, kind of.
Vivian is sharing, I would love to learn more about Saskatchewan stories.
Oh, yes, Saskatchewan's great.
I didn't know that. I didn't know. I have not heard a lot of stories either.
From Saskatchewan. Yeah, there's a Centennial building in Regina I've written about, which is an old train hub. Somebody mentioned earlier in the comments about the trains being on ley lines and stuff like that. The Centennial Market had a secret office in the upper part that was revealed, and they were using it as a marketplace, and it was a Sears at one point. So
anything with secret something, I'm in. Secret something and tunnels. Oh yeah.
the restaurant in Swift Current, Saskatchewan, I believe, that has some lore to it. I did speak with a folklorist who knew Dale Jarvis, and she's in Saskatchewan. And my grandfather, here, I'm going through my book, sorry, to find some Saskatchewan stuff. My grandfather was born in Fenwood, Saskatchewan. So while I was writing the book, I found out that, and that kind of influenced me more as like Saskatchewan means
that's
a whole
pretty cool too. That you learned more about your own family as you were.
Absolutely. Yeah. And knowing during the same time, and I didn't include it in the book, but the Doan family, the Doan gang in the U.S., who, I mean, during the War of Independence were a thorn in Washington's side. Two of the brothers had gone up to Canada, and one of them married into my family line. So it's interesting going back. They were Quakers, and my family, my mom's, you go back far enough, were Amish.
History is fascinating, right? My mom dug deep, and Abraham Lincoln is some great time something grandfather to us. And I'm like, I love that, doing what I do now, and their connection to spiritualism. No wonder. Like, it's great.
It is a double-edged sword, though. My mom is big on genealogy, and she goes back far enough, and then she goes forward, and she goes, oh, you're related to Humphrey Bogart, favorite actor, right? And then she goes, oh, you go back far enough, and you go forward, you're related to Cindy Crawford, my biggest crush growing up as a teenager. And I'm like, oh, well, thanks, Mom. So I'm like, wow, I went there. That's just weird now.
Sucked the air to the room on that one.
Yeah. So it's a double-edged sword. I mean, I thought it was cool. Okay, you go back. Yeah, I mean, we go back far enough, you're related to somebody, right?
Somebody. But, for sure. Everybody wants to be Cleopatra in their past life too. So, there's that. Denise Smith, great chat. Thank you, Denise. The falls in Quebec story reminded me of the scenic caves in Collingwood, Lover's Leap.
Yes, I've heard of Lover's Leap. Yeah, I have heard of that place. Yeah.
So, let everybody know where they can purchase the book. Where are you doing a book signing coming up anytime soon? Where can people find you?
I'm trying to connect and do another one. In the new year, I will be signing probably in Toronto again. I'm trying to get out to Pickering this weekend to do a book signing at oh my gosh, it's escaping me right now. But you can find the book at Dundurn Press, the website, Eerie Whispers, of course, if you connect with that. It's available at Indigo bookstores, Barnes & Noble in the U.S. You can order it through your independent bookstores, of course. And yeah, it's the ALC Art and Oddities Parlor in Pickering. I'm going to try and get out to this weekend. They're having an event Christmas event. So if you're out in the Durham region area, pay them a visit. And I pull that back up again. It's ALC Art and Oddities Parlor, 900 Brock Road, Unit 5.
Thank you. This has been great.
Yeah,
spending time with me tonight and sharing with all of the listeners about a little more about Canadian history and your book, which is full of information that's, I hope that everybody takes the opportunity to buy it and read it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on. This has been wonderful. I know I'm chatty. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so busy through the Paracon. You don't really get to hang out with anybody because you're so busy doing things, right? So this was a great opportunity. Thank you so very much. When book 2, which if it's cryptids, whatever, please know that the door is open.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
You're so welcome. Thank you, everybody in the chat. I appreciate all of you for being here. You guys help make the show what it is. So thank you to Michelle DeRoche, our network manager, and Joe Montaldo, our network owner. So thank you to the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 in the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Next week on the show, Patty Negri is coming back on. So Patty is coming on to talk about her new book, Haunted Dolls and Magic. So we're going to be talking about creepy haunted dolls. It's creepy to me, but Patty, I'm sure will have a positive take on it. And we're going to talk about that next week on the show. So have a great weekend, everybody. Good night.
Take care. Thank you, Joanne.